In a world where college football is all about money, Houston just found a way to make $3 million extra dollars next season.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, I think you're making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day, as you do each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. Subscribe down below, help the show grow, and bring the latest on the Houston Cougars every single day. Today was brought to you by Caution, because if you're making those predictions, you want to make sure you're making them in a way that can help benefit you. Best place to make those predictions is Caution. We'll talk more about them later. With code Locked On, you get some extra cash flow that way. Now, look, Houston can make some extra cash, speaking of cash flow, with their football schedule next season in a way that they have not been able to in quite some time. We'll talk about that in a moment. That's the first segment. Second segment is that season will also be Keisean Henderson's first season as a starter. Could prove to be a pretty important one for the Cougars all the way around. How about what we need to see at a Keisean in a statistical sense to maybe feel like we're comfortable going into his starting season with that big, thing on his shoulders. Last but not least, that Rivals recruiting company did something. Rivals did what? We'll talk about it as well. But first, if you have not heard, Houston is playing LSU next season. Texas kickoff opens up the season at NRG Stadium. Houston is guaranteed a $2.5 million payout, can get up to $3 million. There's a percentage of the gross ticket revenue and max payout of 55,000 tickets sold or whatever. I should actually probably stress all these numbers. I'm A, referencing to make sure you don't get the numbers wrong, but B, Duarte of the Chronicle is the one who pushed all this out. That's where these numbers come from. The $3 million, though, if you're trying to contextualize that, this season in your non-conference home games, and that's really why you're playing this one in NRG, is to maximize what that can be. Now, if Houston gets to 55,000 tickets, they can get that full $3 million. 55,000 at U of H tickets would be a big deal, considering TDCU will still be TDCU at that point. Presently, TDCU Stadium seats 40,000, right? So it's more than a full TDCU on the Houston side of selling things. Now, this is, I also should point out, a repeat game, and so I think Houston has every reason to think that they can sell tickets to that one, because when Houston and LSU played in the Texas Bowl to end the 2025 season, the most recent Houston football game we actually saw, the attendance that game was 63,800, and there was a whole lot of red. For what it's worth, Houston also won that bowl game, and there's no direct connection. Winning a bowl game in December of 2025 does not mean you sell out your portion of tickets in an August game or September game of 2027. It is a similar opponent. I think both teams are heading in a direction where that will be an exciting season for sure. But I think we've seen that if that game has every reason to think that there's a really good chance they break that 60,000 seat march. When Houston played LSU back in 2020, back in December of 2025 to end last season, we briefly hit on this idea of this being like a barometer, a measuring stick. LSU was going through their coaching change, but was getting things turned pretty quickly because LSU was bringing some Ole Miss stuff with him, some shiny toys and stuff like that with him. And Houston, right, was wrapping up a strong season and going into that 2027 start of the year matchup. With the year in between, both programs be looking to build towards having a really good product on the field in that 2027 season. Now, I think Houston will get there this season as well. I think Houston's a pretty strong program, but we've seen the growth in this Houston Cougar football program under Willie Fritz take big leaps, right? Well, what does the leap look like by the time we get to September of 2027? LSU and Lane Kiffin, right? That's a whole bunch of money, old traditional money in that one. Look, I don't want to beat around the bush on this one. NRG being in Houston and there being a ton of LSU fans in this region, really from Baton Rouge to Houston, is a big part of this. It's also why you scheduled the game, right? You scheduled the game as a moneymaker, knowing that fan base was so present in the area, but that is a big part of this. Can Houston, in the time between last December and that September matchup of 2027, build through success this season, experiences had this season, etc., their own fair share of that portion? Houston has to continue to grow and build in those areas. We've talked to people both ad hoc. We've talked to people from Lincoln Coogs and stuff like that about how to help best help this program, I should say. But getting a successful turnout in this matchup would be kind of a quick way to get yourself to this kind of matchup with a potential big team happening more often. We know Houston and Oklahoma will play, presently scheduled to play in 2028. SEC's changing their scheduling up, so that could change. It has not changed yet, but people want a piece of that Houston market for TV sales and revenues, and Houston can call that their backyard. And LSU and this potential $3 million game per school, right? Like, can you use this as an example as like, look, this set up both schools really well for a great season. This set up both schools really well financially to have some cash flow to help out with revenue sharing or coaches and staff or putting on good times for recruiting weekends or facilities or resources, other aspects of your athletic department. This money can go anywhere within that. Also, from a competitive balance standpoint, there's gonna be a lot of hype. There's a lot of hype around LSU every reason, for better or for worse, right? That comes with the uniform for them, right? Houston is continuing to build, and there's a reason to think that on the field you can build towards your financial portfolio and all that too by having a great outing and a win in that matchup. Right now, again, we hadn't even played the 2026 season. I'm talking about winning 2027 games. Parker, you're crazy. Yeah, I get it. I get that a lot actually, but the value of that game in a literal sense could be $3 million, but in a strength of schedule perspective, getting a bin winning into the SEC perspective, and getting SEC opponents to feel like you're a worthy matchup because of their strength of schedule and so on, all of those things, right? You can actually build this out into a lot more. Houston basketball has done this. Kelvin Sampson's been really open and blunt about how scheduling these non-conference neutral site things for money helps everyone involved financially. The only person that gets screwed is kind of the season ticket holding fan, right? That's part of being a benefit in the Big 12 is you get great season tickets now. You get more fun games there. But in terms of football, right, LSU football branding is a different monster of sorts. And getting to play with them, and this gets to be a lot of fun. If Houston can have a great season this year, like we think they will, I think they will anyway, and then open that season, Keisean Henderson, 5-star quarterback, LSU, all the hoopla, and then put a great product on the field in that game. I mean, we're talking huge. That's opening weekend, Labor Day. Frankly, if Houston's got a really good year this year and Keisean's the man, you could have a bunch of ESPN paraphernalia there. Are you talking college game day kind of to open the season if 2026 is that kind of a year for Houston and LSU? Could that matchup open 2027 with game day there? The snowball of this winning turns into attention turns into tickets and demand and sales and dollars. Valuable games come out of that because you're a more valuable brand. That leads to more money helps get more investment goes back to winning, and the whole thing can continue to go faster. I think it's moving now too, but it continues to grow and move faster. So again, $3 million potential dollars per Joe Duarte, Houston Chronicle, coming out of this LSU matchup in September of 2027. And what a great time for that to be potentially hitting the program. That's also potentially hitting the program and what is at least presently slated to be almost definitely Keisean Henderson's first scheduled start. And that leads to a lot of questions like, okay, there's no more redshirting. So what does this year need to look like for that to be the hype, the appropriate hype it needs to have. I want to get into all that in just a second. But before we get that, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Indeed. Because, look, we're talking about putting together a strong roster. You're trying to put together a strong roster at your workplace. When workplace chaos hits, you need the right hire. Indeed Sponsor Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, location. Less time gets spent searching, more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In the minute you and I are going to talk about Indeed, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed according to Indeed data worldwide. You know, you need that left guard like Shadra Hurst, or you need that big-time receiver like Amari Thomas, or you need that DB to come back to your team like Kentrell Webb. Whatever the case may be, you need the right fit and the right guy for the right job, and that is best found with someone like Indeed. It's a job for Indeed Sponsor Jobs. You can spend less time searching, more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of the boxes. All the boxes. Now, we need the right person to cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed Sponsor Jobs. And listen to the show, you can get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Go to Indeed.com/podcast. Tell them you heard about Indeed on this podcast. You get the picture now. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire. It's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Park Rangers Locked on Coogs. Each day the Coogs fix completely ad-free by joining the Every Dare Club today. Start a 7-day free trial right now, close to the Coogs without any interruptions. Click the link in the show notes. Go to lockedoncougs.supercast.com. And thank you for making Locked on Cougs your first listen today and making Locked on Sports Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network on the planet Earth. Keisean Henderson, 5-star quarterback, at one point was the number one player in America. That changed up some because I think when he committed to Houston, people got Houston ding, which will kind of come in the third segment a little bit actually. But he is scheduled to be a freshman this season, while Connor Wegman is going to be the starting senior, fifth-year senior this season. And look, we should stress, Connor had a great year last year. Under-discussed how strong. I mean, 2,700 yards passing, 36 total touchdowns, less than 10 interceptions, 700 yards rushing as well. Like, it's his first full off season with the same head coach and offensive coordinator and position coach and all the things with his own health included. It's his first off season like that in college. The continuity will be strong. I'm expecting a big thing this year from him. But for Keisean, who will likely be the starter of that LSU game in 2027, exciting way to start your college career, to say the least. I think folks are excited because given the new rules, Keisean does not have, there's no such thing as a red shirt anymore. So he doesn't have to sit this season. We can get glimpses as to what he will look like. Willie Fritz said at Big 12 Media Days, he said throughout the offseason, there's not a Keisean package. He's not a package deal. I think even at Big 12 Media Days, I think the quote was, he is the total package, right? That was the thing. And so I went through and looked at, like, okay, quarterbacks that were playing behind veterans as freshmen or as younger quarterbacks that had really strong college careers. What did their freshman year look like? I think the best example of this going for anyone is Florida. Florida had Tim Tebow as a freshman. He was playing behind senior Chris Leak. Tim Tebow's freshman year, they won a national title, obviously, with Urban Meyer. He completed 66.7% of his passes, but only threw 33 of them. He had 5 touchdowns, but he was much more of a runner, had about 90 rushes for almost 500 yards and 8 touchdowns running the ball that season. But his sophomore year, when given the reins, Tebow won the Heisman, right? Famously won the Heisman his sophomore year, and then he turned around and almost won it again his junior year, but they didn't win a national title with him as the starting quarterback his junior year. Like, Tebow had a great college career, right? That's, for example, I think that's the way you see it working out, the absolute best. Now, I will tell you right now, I am very confident that freshman Keisean Henderson can throw the football better than freshman Tim Tebow. Where they turn out after all that, I don't know. But freshman versus freshman, I can put on the video, and I just feel very confident that Keisean throws the better football, right? Now, Tebow is also a fullback size guy that could run you over the goal line. Keisean got a little more wiggle in his jiggle, but that's how it goes, right? And I think another good example of this is that Alabama team that had Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, right? Um, Tua, as a freshman, threw just 77 passes. He had 11 touchdowns and 2 picks, 63% completions. The big caveat to Tua's freshman season is Tua subs in at halftime because Jalen Hurts plays the first half of the national championship game very poorly. Tua comes in and helps Alabama come back and win the football game, wins national championship, right? That was like a very, I want to say, unique situation, hard to recreate those circumstances. And honestly, I wonder if Tua doesn't have that moment. If Hurts is playing great or he doesn't have the comeback or whatever, do we see that relationship shape out differently? Because Jalen Hurts was not a senior, right? Tua would be second in the Heisman race his sophomore year to one Kyler Murray, who we'll talk about in a second, but that's obviously the way that goes. Kyler, not a perfect comparison. He transferred around some, sort of at A&M. Kyler, between his between his junior and senior seasons, right? Didn't get a second season. He went from 21 passes thrown, just 3 touchdowns his junior season, to 1,000 yards rushing and 4,360 passing yards on 69 completions his senior season. Right now, his junior season, Baker Mayfield had very similar numbers and won the Heisman. There's a reason he didn't start that year. He might have always been that good, right? But again, a guy that comes in after having a very small sample his 1 year, and then the next year has a lot of playing. Carson Palmer, his Heisman season, there was a true freshman being redshirted behind him by the name of Matt Leinart. Leinart would go on to win his own national titles and Heismans and whatever later. I guess you call that, even that they got Reggie Bush vacated, whatever, right? 2017 Ohio State's also wild. JT Barrett, really great. 35 touchdowns, 3,000 yards, 800 yards rushing. Frankly, a kind of season I could see Connor Wegman having. 35 touchdowns, 65% completion, 3,000 yards, 800 rushing, 12 touchdowns rushing. Like that's could very well be a natural progression as to what Connor's year looks like next year. Behind him was Dwayne Haskins, a freshman. Behind Dwayne Haskins was a sophomore by the name of Joe Burrow. 2018, Dwayne Haskins had 4,800 yards, 50 touchdowns, really big season. But in 2017, Haskins threw just 40 passes, 70% completions. Joe Burrow did even less than that, had to transfer to LSU to get more than that, but had one of the best quarterback seasons at LSU in 2019 of all time with 60 passing touchdowns, 5,600 passing yards, national championship to boot. I'd say to say that in looking at these examples, I don't think Keisean's actual stat lines will matter all that much towards his success as a sophomore. In each of these examples, right, they obviously played behind a successful quarterback in Barrett or Baker or whomever, right, Leak, right, but they got a little bit of experience, with the exception of Matt Leinart. They got a little bit of experience on the field. They got to see what it looks like and wait out a year. And then they showed up and had incredible showings shortly thereafter in their college careers. Now, I'm expecting Connor, knock on wood, to continue to be healthy all year long. But I think Connor could very well be having around 3,000 yards passing, over 30 touchdowns passing. I would imagine around 700 rushing and, just over 10 rushing touchdowns as well. And that would be a natural progression from his last season. And it'd be the kind of year that you could comfortably, in some games where you have the lead intact, or, a possession here, a possession there, get Keisean some run when you want to and kind of get him in the flow of things. I understand there is no red shirt, so you don't benefit anything from not playing him at all. But I think we've seen time and time again a lot of, you play 2 quarterbacks, you don't really have one, all that kind of stuff when you're trying to play 2 guys evenly. And I think we've seen, frankly, times where playing a quarterback too early can almost stunt their development later because they're getting rattled around or whatever, right? They're true freshmen. I understand there is no red shirt. I kind of feel like we should slow play Keisean this year to have a big 2027 because, again, there's nothing to say that tremendous all-time great college quarterbacks had to play as freshmen either. Are there examples of that? Absolutely. But some of these guys that have had all-time great college careers were playing behind pretty veteran guys their freshman year, and they worked out just fine. I think that's where we'll see Keisean is having, let's say he throws 50, 60 passes this season. I'm looking at like the completion percentage, touchdown interception ratio, okay? Decisions he's making, like those kinds of things. Is he having to check it down a lot? Is he running around for his life a lot? Is he holding on the ball too long, right? Average time to throw. Those are the things I want to look at in his stat line, given his situation. And then 2027, here's the key to the car, kid. No pun intended, but take it and go, right? Have a year of development this year. Use having a guy like Connor ahead of you as a reason to, frankly, learn a lot and then continue to go. Obviously, if Keisean shows up and lights it up, all bets are off. But that is kind of where I see this going. And then I see Keisean showing up to beat LSU and start 2027. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun when he does it, frankly. It's going to be a lot of fun when he does it. That if Keisean is what's next, the question after that is, okay, who comes after Keisean? And we kind of got a glimpse into that with some recruiting news on Thursday. But then people tried to hide that. It'll make more sense in a second. But first, the show is brought to you by our buddies over at Caution, because before the season even kicks off, everyone's trying to make predictions about it. That's what we do all the time. You, your buddies, the water cooler, you and I, making predictions about the season. Who's going to win the division like the AFC South, or who's going to make the playoffs, who's lifting a trophy at the end of the season on Caution, America's #1 prediction market platform. You can trade those predictions in a live market. Look, can the Texans win 11 games this season? The Texans are currently trading at 113% probability, meaning $100 will pay out $113 the moment they hit that 11th win. I feel pretty good about this defense and what they're doing with that Texans team. And so I'm thinking that might be the case. But if you think I'm right, you're wrong, whatever, however you want to go about it, go to Caution, because you're trading against peers like you and I on a live market. There is no house. As the probabilities change, you can buy in or out of your position, trade the draft pick in the game, and more on Caution. Download the Caution app today. Use code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, to get $10 when you trade. $10. Caution is KALSHI. Caution trade anything, 18 and up only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Caution products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see caution.com/regulatory. Today's show is also brought to you by Odoo. Running a business should not feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never really designed to work together in the first place. One app for accounting, another inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of those systems talk to one another. And that's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. Best organizations know the success is not just about talent, but having everyone working toward the same goal. It's true in sports, just like it is in business. When Kelvin Sampson talked about the Houston Cougar basketball culture, that is having the same goal at all times for all 40 minutes of all 40 basketball games in a season. But you know that. You're building a successful business yourself. It's the exact same principle. Great organizations win because the operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's Odoo, odoo.com/lockedon. Park Rangers Locked on Coogs here. Thank you for making Locked on Coogs for this listen of the day. Making Locked on Sports Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network on planet Earth. And on Thursday, we started getting some hints at who could be the next quarterback Houston's recruiting. They've got a 2027 high-end 3-star. He might be a 4-star by the time things roll around. We'll see. And 2028, Tristin Gaines out of Waller is a 4-star quarterback. Waller being obviously like in the backyard of the Houston Cougars feels pretty important. And Rivals did a write-up after talking to him after a pretty impressive 7-on-7 summer. Bluntly gained a lot of traction. I keep doing puns today. What's wrong with me? What is wrong with me? But he gained a lot of traction in the summer with some pretty strong 7-on-7 performances and is being recruited by Oregon, Michigan, Florida Tech, and Houston. And they mentioned that SMU, Arizona State, Kentucky, UCLA, others are also recruiting him, but that those 5 schools, Oregon, Michigan, Florida Tech, and Houston, are really working him a lot. And the article's behind a paywall, so I don't want to like give the game away that I have a moral thing of, hey, that's how the writer gets paid right away. I'm not trying to give every single quote away, but Gaines mentioned in speaking to him that Houston has coaching staff that makes him feel, very much loved and appreciated. They're in his backyard. He could play at home, all of that, right? Like things all were trending very good for Houston. They didn't say they were his favorite. They didn't say anyone was his favorite, but he was very positive about Houston in the conversation with the writers at Rivals, which begs the question as to when they put up the tweet with the article and a graphic, as you can see on the screen for the video audience. They had him playing quarterback in a 7-on-7 garb or whatever. And the school logos are Florida, Michigan, Oregon, and Tech. 4 of those top 5, notably missing Houston. Look, I get that Houston's not going to win every recruit in Texas or the Houston area. I'd like to. I get that they won't. I get that Oregon and Michigan will come in and poach a couple kids. High school football is so good in this region, right? And frankly, it's not even that big a deal to me to get every single one because there's just too many high-end kids. You can't make there's more than your roster could hold, right? You're not going to get every single one of them. But there's no indication in the write-up. I'm not going to give every word away from the paywall, but there's no indication in the write-up or in the quote that Houston is not just as competitive in this as Oregon, Michigan, Florida, or Tech. And frankly, if there's any dividing line in the article, it's that the 5 schools, Oregon, Michigan, Florida, Tech, and Houston, have kind of separated themselves as a 5-some from SMU, Arizona State, Kentucky, and UCLA. And look, that just rubs me the wrong way. There's plenty of room on the graphic. It's not like there's not space or something like that. And frankly, you talk about like brand power. If you never put Houston as a logo on the recruits they're doing well with, the brand never grows. And so I don't want to hear about, well, Houston's brand is this, Houston's brand is that, Houston's logo, because this is a chicken and egg debate. If they'd been putting Houston logos on Cam Roberson, on Raiden Cook, on Keisean Henderson, on Paris Melvin, throughout their entire recruitments, those guys who are presently committed to or on the Houston Cougar football team that were all blue chip prospects in their own right, if they'd been correctly tracking Houston's successful recruitment of those kids, where would the brand be today? Now we have a 2028 quarterback in the backyard, Waller, Texas, right? Put the logo on the graphic. It's not that complicated. It's not that hard. It takes 2 seconds on Kid Picks, Canva. Pick whatever your poison is, right? Now, if you're Tristin Gaines, I think it begs the question, okay, we just talked about Keisean taking the reins as a second-year player in 2027. This is a 2028 kid. What's he want to do with all that? I think his recruitment, as far as Houston's involvement goes, will come down to watching Keisean, right? Keyshawn's a 5-star everything. Keisean is a pro athlete at the very least, and I think has a real good shot at being a pro quarterback too. And Keyshawn's progressed super fast to this point. I think you watch his sophomore quarterback tape to his camp this fall quarterback tape. You're like, who is this kid? Are these really the same person? He's so much better. It indicates his own work ethic, I should stress. He's so much better now than he was then that it kind of feels like the sky is the limit. If you're Tristin Gaines, you're a high school 2028 kid. That means your first fall on campus would be the fall of 2028. That could be, as Keisean's 3rd year in the program, the year before Keisean goes pro, because Keisean would be NFL eligible as soon as that fall was up. And so if Keisean's going to watch Connor and then play a couple and go pro, and your Tristin Gaines playing for your hometown team could be important, and why wouldn't you want to do the exact same path? Look, Houston may not get that. I don't know. right? I'm not trying to predict the future. I watched some video on Tristin gains on his huddle tape and whatever. It's free and available online. But I do think that the path for Tristin to Houston makes a ton of sense. The fit for Tristin in Houston makes a ton of sense. He's got great pocket. A guy who was a sophomore in high school last year, great pocket awareness. I think good arm strength for a kid that young. Makes pretty good reads on the deep ball, when to throw, when not to. Right, I trust it. Right, he had pretty good 7-on-7 summer. It sounded like in the write-up, and in the write-up, he likes things at Houston. I think there's a shot there, and I think it's worth at least putting the logo on the article. Right, I don't think that again. I'm not even getting into where I want you to place it. A top row, a bottom row, a middle of the five, wherever. In your own words, Houston was in this. Houston should be in this, right? And so that's where I'm going with that. It's hard to build a brand when some folks telling the story nationally won't include you. It just is. Look, Houston's building a brand whether they want you to or not. It's coming. The season's coming. It's about to be a fun one. About to be a really fun one. And we're going to keep talking about it, basketball, more recruiting, whatever is the latest. We're talking about each and every day here at Locked on Coogs. So hit subscribe, help the show grow. We're trying to get to, we're at like 4,200 something subscribers, maybe 4,250, 4,240, somewhere in there. If we can get to 4,500 by the time Houston kicks off against Oregon State, we're going to give something away. I don't know what yet, but we're going to give something away. Locked on Coogs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network, and that means your team every day. Go Coogs.